So let's talk about the prophetic. Um, I've seen you share prophetic words, words of knowledge. I've been on the receiving end of insightful things from you. For me, we're in a movement that values hearing from the Lord. So I guess I'm asking you, what does the prophetic, what does it look like for you day to day in your faith and as a leader and as a senior pastor? How do you navigate that and participate in it?
Yeah, I struggled to answer this question. I just think it's been a part of who I am and how I lead for a long time, and I think some of it's now, it's just part of me, and I don't know that it's operating. But as I've thought it through and how I could possibly answer this question, one thing I would say is you have to remember to turn it on, because I don't know how it works for other people, but I have to pay attention, and I have to ask the Lord, what are you trying to say to me, and how can I hear you? And that's different in different contexts. So, when we're in a ministry time on a Sunday morning or at a conference or something, that looks one way, but I always have to ask. I don't just walk around and feel like the thing just hits me or something like that. I always have to ask. But it also looks different in a leaders meeting or a trustees meeting or something like that, or when I'm praying for someone or doing some kind of low level counseling with someone, or trying to do discernment with someone, or it looks different in sermon prep and things like that. But it always begins with asking and assuming God wants to speak and say something. And so whether anybody would consider themselves prophetically gifted or not, my default assumption is that God wants to speak to us. And whether or not you ever get up on a stage and give a prophetic word or not, he wants to speak to you. He wants to speak to you about your life. He wants to speak to you about what's going on in your soul. He wants to give you solutions to unsolvable problems that you face. He wants to give you, in the midst of that argument with your spouse or your kids, he wants to give you that way out. And the best piece of advice I ever got about hearing from God and stuff like that, it's like learning a language, and you have to learn how God speaks to you. And once you begin to recognize that and learn that language, it just seems to flow a good bit better. And that's something I've always tried to do, is just figure out that language. How does God speak to me? And as I've gotten to know other people and other leaders, I've realized God speaks really differently to them, and that's great, and that's wonderful. But it just helps us in that really liminal space of, is this God speaking, or did I not get enough sleep last night, or have I had too much coffee and I'm all fired up, and just the gentle ways that the Spirit speaks and leads. And I've had the privilege of being a part of like some of the big moments, when you are on a stage, but that's like 0.5% of the time. The rest of it is like the quiet whisperings of the Spirit. And then I really think, what I long for people is to learn how God speaks to them for them, because it's back to that formation thing and living deeply in the love of Jesus. I've had great prophetic words spoken over me, and they've been life-changing. But what's been more life-changing is the steady commitment to his presence, where he speaks right into my soul. And that is worth pursuing. That is the greater treasure. And I love being part of a movement where we believe God speaks and can speak at the drop of a hat, and even in wonderfully strange ways. And we get to exercise that, and we should. And I love that space. But what I think is the more precious space is helping people figure out that Jesus wants to speak to you now about you. And he wants to communicate his love and care for you, and his direction and his legacy that he has for you. So There, that's
Wow.
what I got. You can ask me more, or we can move on to the next one.
No, that was awesome.